All right, so welcome back everyone to JFace Games. What's going on with the power system? I had that magic video recently, and I got some great feedback on the magic, and I'll talk about that. I think that at this point in time, I'm going to stick with the magic system I have, which is you have a mystic dice, and that mystic dice unlocks your ability to get different powers that are more mystical in nature. They have more magical elements to them. But what I want to really focus on is when I build those powers, they feel different. In talking with a friend about magic systems, he pointed out that what he thought was most important is that magic system felt different than traditional combat system in the game. And what he made a point of was 4th edition. So 4th edition is a system that I love, he loves, we both play together. But the problem that he has with 4th edition is that when you break down the characters, whether you're a melee character or a magic user or whatever, you have powers, and those powers are mechanical abilities that you use. If I'm going to use cleave, I've got my cleave power. I now use the cleave action and something happens. If I have magic missile, I have my magic missile power. If I use it, something happens. And so when it came down to it, yes, there might be flavor text, and yes, you might be an RP that something different is happening, but mechanically it feels it feels the same. You know, mechanically there's no difference. And so he pointed out that he would have liked that mechanically magic felt different. And that's what I was trying to get into with the last video where I was talking about how can you make it feel a little bit different magic, like you're doing something a little bit different. I think that I had settled, I think that the last time I talked about the magic system, I think there were some great things in the comments really talking about we don't want the system to bog anything down. You still want it to be simplistic. And so at this point in time, I'm taking a step back from making it too complicated. We're just going to use the mystic dice. We're going to roll forward, and hopefully we just design the powers to make them feel better. So let's go through some powers that we've now created. I've been trying to knock out more and more powers. And I'm kind of currently using the quest sort of like subheaders, but I might change that up in the future. But I've actually gotten into sort of like some of these invocation powers as well. So I think I've gotten down to here, which is sort of this impression, but that's fine. Now, I'm using a lot of those quest powers, and I'm using a lot of the cipher system and even the open legend system to kind of give me inspiration. Eventually I might even get into some of these 4E abilities, because I think that 4E has a lot of cool classes and a lot of cool concepts. Now, some things that randomly came up down here, I put in some like, what do I think are cool mechanics sounding? So like, for instance, this balanced assault, I don't know who's going to do it or what's going to do it, but I like the idea that maybe you get pluses equal to how many dice you have that are a D8 or higher, meaning that I've balanced my character. Now I've taken defense dice, controller dice, mystic dice, leadership dice, and defender dice all up at one step together. So they're all D6s. So I haven't hyper specialized. So maybe there's a route, a tree route, that they do that. You're a balanced character, and now you can have very specific, interesting, balanced powers. And it might not just be you get a plus for, you know, 1 for equal. It might be you have some cool combos because of that, right? So that's the kind of thing when I have those ideas, I just jot them down at the bottom. One of the deep dives I went down is I have a background in martial arts. I used to do Kung Fu and teach it. And so I really like Kung Fu. You know, I like the monk classes a lot in a lot of systems, but sometimes I also felt they were falling short. So this is, I went a little too much, and even my buddy said this is a little too powerful, but that's okay. You know, this is one of those things that this will probably get broken up into 5 different abilities, but I just wanted to show that sort of like some of the research and thought process I have here. So conceptually, this is the 5 animal stance. So you would have an ability. This is showing sort of that concept of you have to have a bunch of different dice in order to even get into this. But in essence, you engage in a stance, and when you want to switch from stance to stance, it would cost another action. Here are the 5 different sort of like stances. So this is just giving you flavor text in terms of what do those stances traditionally kind of do. This was then me trying to say, okay, gameplay wise, what might this look like if you were in these different stances? And then finally, these were the like stances to try and think mechanically, what might like that look like? So a crane stance, crane's very defensive and keeps range and gets away, but has quick strikes that are very, pinpoint. So maybe attacks can be made at even short distance individuals because you have this sort of like longer reach with your strikes. Your striker dice is reduced, meaning you're not as adept at hitting and doing, damage potentially, but you have advantage with your defense. And after someone misses you, you actually can move. So it's like if someone misses you, you can disengage from them. And so I thought that really enabled that sort of, I'm mobile and I'm striking out at people at a distance, but maybe I'm not as strong. Tiger, you're just vicious, harder attacks, and maybe you actually cause some sort of hindrance or you add some sort of effect to someone when you hit them. Dragon's also very defensive, but they're defensive. They're not mobile. They're defensive because they're twisting and turning in a single location. But what I thought would be but they're counterattacks. So I thought would be really interesting is they have advantage on defender dice, but they don't actually use any of their actions for attacks. What it is that they get a counterattack whenever someone attacks them, but they don't have to spend a reaction. So it's like they get infinite counterattacks as long as someone is attacking them nearby or engaged. But they don't have an attack action. So it's very reactionary in essence. I thought that was interesting. Leopard is very fast, lots of strikes, and also very mobile. And so I wanted to say that you're not as much damage, but every attack action you use, you actually get 2 attacks. And then on your turn, you could also use your attack action, and during that you get 1 attack and 1 move. So you become a little bit more mobile. You get like, in essence, like a fury of blows sort of thing. And then Snake is just deadly in grapples and wraps. And so you get advantage on your attacks and you can actually grapple. So the way to balance this, I thought, would be that it would just be a lot of, like, if you got into this stance system where you could move from stance to stance, the spark points to get into it would be high. So technically, if you ever do any other attack action, if you used any other one of these powers, so say you had, something else, if you ever used any of these other powers, by using it, you would get knocked out of that stance, and so you'd have to pay the cost to get back into it. What I'll probably do is break up those stances, make it so that each one of those individual stances is something individual. Down here, I thought these were interesting. So Invocations, there's a vow. So this is like, in Quest, there's this character called the Invoker, which is kind of like a mix between an Avenger and a Paladin. It's very, vengeance potentially driven, or like a Judge Dredd type character. I thought this vow system might be interesting, and it's mystical. So, you declare a vow and you're given divine presence to help accomplish this task, right? So you vow that you will do something and you now gain advantage 10, which means you get to roll a d10 plus whatever that dice is for your next action towards this goal, right? As long as it's towards that goal. But you can't use vow again until you've accomplished your previous vow. So if it's, I'm going to kill this foe, my next attack, I'm going to get my striker dice plus a d10, I take the higher. But I'm not going to get this ability until that monster has actually been killed, right? So I can't just say my vow is I want to hit this goal, because that's kind of lame, right? It's got to be like, like a big deal, right? So what are the things that kind of spawn off that? Well, you have vow of defense, vow of retribution, and vow of command. So in other words, this would be like defender dice based, leadership dice based, and striker dice based. So I thought these were kind of interesting. This one is you declare that you will protect someone and you utilize the will of a higher power to assist you. You and your ward are shrouded by energy. You can describe the type, and start acting as one together. And so you have to be engaged with the person that you want to protect. You use an action to use this ability, and then on a defensive roll that is an attack on either you or your ward, you both roll your defender dice and you take the higher. So it's like advantage, but it's advantage where I'm rolling a defender dice and my buddy who I'm defending are rolling a defender dice. And so in my head, it's like one of those scenes in the movie where it's like we're back to back and I'm blocking there and then he's striking this person and I'm coming over. And so it's like, you see it in like Last Samurai when like Tom Cruise and Ken Watanabe are in the house and the ninjas are coming and it's like, I'm gonna block this guy but leave my back open because you're striking that guy, and etc. So I thought that was kind of cool sounding. You know, if the target you're defending is an NPC, the DM then just determines what that defense dice is it's using. So if it's a non-player character, the DM's going to tell you how well that person defends. So I thought this was cool, right? And this is starting to use more mystic die. Technically, mechanically, this probably could be, this probably could also be like a teamwork power, where it's like, if you and I both have the teamwork power, we can then use this. But I don't know. At this point in time, I thought this was pretty cool. Maybe it's giving you some sort of other ability. So that's where I'm at right now. That's an idea. I'll show you one more. Here's Vow of Retribution. Well, let's do Vow of Command, because I think that's a little bit different. Let's see what happens. In a dire situation, you call about a higher being to flow through you as you try to turn the tide of battle and influence those around you. I wanted to make this a little bit more interesting, and so what I thought would be cool is that because this has to be in a dire scenario, every member of the party has to have had at least 1 to 2 minor trauma, right? So everyone's got to have some sort of hurt on them. And then, so it's very situational. And then you get to use this ability, and then each round, your comrades all get either +1 to their effort die or +1 to their spark points. They get to choose. And if you remember, at the beginning of the turn, you get to do that normally. So now, in essence, you're getting to do that twice. You're getting +2 spark or +2 effort, which could be huge. In each round, though, the person who's using this is going to lose either a spark, an effort, or a stress. So I wanted to make sure they had that option of like, I need to gain that spark point this turn, because at the beginning of my turn, I'm going to gain 1 effort or 1 spark point. I need that, so I'm going to take a stress instead, right? Or something along those lines. Like, you can kind of figure that out in the moment. If you can't lose any more, so if your effort's at 0 and your spark's at 0, then what ends up happening is this power stops. So I thought that was an interesting one. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it's got a very low spark point entry point. Maybe it's only costs 1 spark point to initiate this, so that way, even though the condition might be challenging, the ability to turn it on is low. So anyways, hopefully that gives an idea of some of the powers and where they're going. I hope to really chug along. I'd love to get this all knocked out completely, and then put it in a nice Notion table that's filterable, and then you guys can kind of, flow through that. Because once this power section's done, I think that's it for character creation. Then it's just balancing the powers. But pretty much what I'll do is I'll just, I'll probably just make up numbers and then play test it. And if someone's like, this power is really powerful, we'll add more spark points to it. The other thing I thought might be interesting, I thought this was important to note, is that there are some abilities now that technically are out of character, right? Or out of an encounter scenario. So Soul Gaze, technically you're going to be looking into a person's eyes, and now you're getting a glimpse of their soul, right? Sort of like Dresden Files, if you've ever seen that. And they're going to get a little look into yours. But I might not do this in combat, right? This might be something that happens just like on the road. And so this brought up the idea of what happens when you're using a power outside of combat. Because at the start of combat, I want you to start with X amount of spark points. And I don't want to take those spark points away from you outside of combat, because I don't want you to all of a sudden enter combat with like 3 spark points, because that's not fun. That's putting you at a disadvantage. So some of these powers, therefore, are going to have to do stress. So in other words, you took stress before the next encounter. So you're still max capabilities because you're going to have spark points, but you're going to be a little bit more fatigued. You're going to be a little bit more drained from what else you were doing before getting there. Now some powers might just automatically happen as long as you have enough time, like a ritual in essence from 5e, and that's fine. But some of these, I think, that are more important, they end up taking stress. And what I thought was cool is if you do this in combat, there will still be a spark point cost, and it takes a RP action. So we finally get to use that RP action instead of something else, where you're going to figure out someone's ideals and flaws. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the, that's it, the bells. And then let me know, leave some comments.